Hi guys, it's Quinn here, and as always, if you enjoy my content, please hit the like button. It's the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices my videos. So I just watched the first 2 episodes of the Apple adaptation of Isaac Asimov's Foundation show, and I've got a few things to say about it. Now, the Foundation book series is of course one of the most influential book series of all time. It's influenced Dune, Star Wars, pretty much every science fiction series thing. Pretty much every science fiction thing that involves any kind of galactic empire. Now, there are 7 books in Asimov's Foundation series. Prelude to Foundation, Forward the Foundation, then there's Foundation, which was the first book released, the 3rd book chronologically, Foundation and Empire, and the second Foundation, Foundation's Edge, and Foundation and Earth. The Foundation series tells the story of the rise and fall of a galactic society. Mainly the rise of one, not really the fall, which I think seems to be the key difference between the series and the show, which I'll get into now. Now, I just want to say that visually, this show really impressed me. It looks really good. The CGI is really good. It's very high budget. It was very pleasing on the eyes. It was like easy to look at. Nothing was like ugly, because sometimes like you see something that's like overdone with CGI and it's kind of like hard to look at. Like I find Star Trek Discovery, for instance, very difficult to look at. Everything's just like too shiny all the time, which to me doesn't feel very much like Star Trek at all. But this is just the right amount of CGI, which is a lot because it is, you know, sci-fi about a galactic empire. But it's done really well. It's not like jarring and it doesn't hurt my eyes. I thought the sets on the show were pretty believable, but some of them were pretty generic. And in fact, I think that a big problem with the show is that everything seems a bit generic and derivative, which is weird to say because Asimov's books influence so much science fiction. But this show itself has definitely been influenced by the sci-fi material that has come out since Asimov's books. For instance, a lot of the shots and a lot of the scenery kind of look like Star Wars. It looks really similar to Star Wars. There's a few Star Wars things that happen. There's a few Star Wars things that happen over the course of these few episodes, like, you know, like some Death Star action, basically. There's a sigil that looks pretty much like a Star Wars Imperial sigil thing. And then there's also some Dune influence all over this. There's a character in this that when you first meet her, she's with a little boy, and it's very much like a scene between Paul and Jessica from Dune. It's like she's definitely giving him like the Bene Gesserit teachings. There's something that works similarly to the holodeck from Star Trek. There's lots of things in this that I've seen in other places, but that I haven't seen in Asimov's books. So I will say the first episode seems to pretty much follow the course of the book. So it's you got Gail Dornick going down to Trantor, gets on the space elevator. And by the way, the space elevator looked super cool in this. Meeting Harry Seldon, they get arrested. They convince the Emperor to let them build on Terminus. It's pretty similar, but with a few liberties taken. Like there's this terrorist attack that happens that's not in the book. And I'm pretty sure they just put that in so they could have their like big giant explosion moment. It looked cool, but it wasn't from the book. It seems to be a part of this deeper mystery involving the planets Anachron and Thespis, which are from later in the book. They have dealings with Terminus later in the book. Well, Anacreon is involved later on. Thespis, I'm pretty sure they made up for the show. So it seems like this show is like tying those two worlds into a mystery involving this terrorist attack on Trantor, and we really don't know what the deal is with it yet. So it seems like what the show is doing is familiarizing us with these worlds before it actually gets to the point where they become important later on in the story. And speaking of later on in the story, there appear to be time jumps in this show. So it starts off 35 years in the future, already on Terminus, and then it jumps back. And then right at the end, it jumps forward again in the first episode, and you see that's 35 years in the future, where they've already colonized Terminus and there's children there. But then in the next episode, it jumped back to the Trantor days. So this is when it started taking the most liberties. This is when it really diverged from the book in the second episode. So the second episode is all about the Emperor, who is sometimes referred to as the Empire. So the Empire is 3 guys. It's a boy, a man, and an old man. So it's like this guy who was emperor decided one day that like he didn't want to die, so he just kept like they would keep cloning him. It's another thing in this show that strikes me as like very like Dune-ish. You know, they even called it like a genetic dynasty. For some reason, they never used the phrase genetic dynasty in the Dune books, but for some reason, that phrase sounds strikingly Dune-ish to me somehow. But the second episode deals with what he's doing in all of his 3 incarnations. We see more of the character Demezriel, who's got some secrets, you know, and there's some secrets hinted in this second episode. But if you haven't read the books, you don't know exactly what secret, but I know what the secret is because I've read the books. But you see her interacting with mainly the younger version of the Empire, the Emperor, whatever he is. You see her interacting mainly with the younger one. She's like kind of a teacher figure. She's the Jessica to his Paul, essentially. And then we also see how the older two are reacting to the terrorist attack that happened on Trantor. The older Emperor seems to want peace. He doesn't want anybody to be executed. He seems to be like he's past that stage in his life. But the younger one is all like fire and blood. He doesn't just want to execute. He wants to like ruin entire planets. There's like a huge genocidal event in the second episode where these 2 planets just get effed up. And it's not quite like in Star Wars. I mentioned the Death Star, but it's not quite like the Death Star where it just like explodes. It's more like there's all these like little like nukes, it looked like, that were firing at the planet. So it's like a lot of death on each of these worlds. And he just did it to make a statement, I guess. So these worlds will definitely become significant later on because they're significant in the book. And I feel like they wouldn't have introduced them in these first 2 episodes if they weren't going to keep using them later on. And also another curious Dune thing that's randomly here is if people have blue eyes. That's like so like, it's not blue within blue, but it's like blue eyes. It's like, come on. Are they also going to live on a desert planet? I don't know. The other part of episode 2 just involved Gel Dornick, Harry Seldon, and some other new characters interacting on the ship on their way to Terminus. And like I said, they've got the holodeck going, they're like training. We see that Gel Dornick, who's a female in the show, is like building a relationship, and that's going. Now the important thing here is, in the book, after Gel Dornick and Harry Seldon decide they're going to go to Terminus and create the Foundation, we don't see Gel Dornick again. But it appears that in the show, they're finding a way to keep Gel Dornick around as a character. So in the show, Harry Seldon is assassinated, it looks like, and it's not clear exactly why. I'm not sure if it's like a Snape Dumbledore thing where it's like Harry set this up so that he would be assassinated, because it seems like he's the psychohistory guy, so he would have known maybe that this was coming. But the result of it is Gel Dornick gets like put in like this deep sleep state and launched into space, like, and we don't know where she's gone. So I assume that Gel Dornick is going to show up some point in the future. So they found a way to keep at least Gel Dornick around. And it seems like at least some version of the Emperor is going to be around consistently for a while, because there was talk in this episode too about extending the fall of the Empire. So it seems like the show is taking liberties with some of the characters in order to keep them around for longer. So you got the Emperor who constantly clones himself, so there'll be an Emperor for a while, and they'll be able to use the same actors over and over again for the Emperor. So that's interesting. I don't mind the character changes very much, because I don't feel like Asimov particularly gave that much care to his characters. The Foundation series isn't really about characters at all. It's about the formation of the Galactic Empire and the continuation of the human species. So I will say the episodes kept me entertained for the most part, but there were a few problems. I thought that the dialogue wasn't that great particularly, and most of the dialogue in these episodes, like the vast majority of it, is not in the books. So it's like all new, or some of it's like reworked dialogue from what's in the books, but it's mostly new dialogue. It's not the best, it's not awful, it's kind of mediocre to average, but it's not making me cringe. It's nowhere near the level of like Game of Thrones season 6 through 8, so it's decent for a television, or maybe even above average for television, I would say. I did find the acting in the show to be a bit wooden at times. Like a bit wooden at times, especially with, I'm sorry to say, Gel Dornick. I just wasn't really like feeling like her from like an emotional perspective. It's clear that they're trying to make the character it's clear that she's the central character in all this. We're seeing this a lot largely through her lens. She's even narrating at certain points. And I felt like for a lot of it, she wasn't giving me exactly what I needed in order to care. And a lot of it could come from the way the show plays out and the way it's written. For instance, the romance that forms. The formation of the romance between her and the guy character that I can't remember the name of, that's not in the book. It happens off screen. Like the first episode, they have no romantic connection, and then the next time we see them in the second episode, a bunch of time has jumped in between episodes and they suddenly have this romantic connection, and there's been no time on screen to build it, so you don't really feel anything for this couple. And so by the end of the episode, when they're separated, it's kind of just like, I don't really care that much. And I thought certain parts of the Empire plot were pretty, like I said, derivative and kind of tired. Like the whole like, let me execute a bunch of people, and it's so like wannabe like Game of Thrones, and I'm just like, I don't care. Like we've seen this a million times at this point. Like mass execution. Like why does everything have to have a mass execution in it? I don't get it. I guess it would have made more sense, or I wouldn't have minded it as much, is if I understood his reasoning for doing it, because this mass execution and then also attacking these two worlds is only going to quicken the fall of your empire. I don't understand why you're doing this. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, that part of it was just like a little bit, I don't really get this. This just seems like it's done for show. This is done so they can have this big moment with a bunch of explosions. And I kind of felt the same way about the fall of the space elevator. Although it looked cool, it was done just so they could have this big moment, like, oh, this big thing falling down. And also, like, I don't understand how the space elevator wasn't more protected. It seems like you have something like a space elevator, it should be like more able to detect bombs. It was like some weird thing where these people, their bodies were explosives somehow. But I just think, like, in this age so far into the future, with something so crucial as a space elevator, like if this thing like collapses, it's going to kill like 100 million people, there would be like more more defenses, more like ways to defend against this, but I guess there weren't. All in all, I think the show's not perfect, but it's a decent start. And though it's definitely taking a bunch of liberties with the material, I think that it still has not yet disrespected the source material, so I will keep watching. And it's entertaining enough. I think the show is doing a decent enough job of like setting up certain mysteries and setting up certain intrigues, but I'm really hoping that they're not going to turn this Gail Dornick plot into some kind of like messiah, like mental psychics chosen one thing, because I was kind of getting that vibe in the first episode a little bit, that they were going to do this Gail Dornick chosen one thing, and I'm just like, please don't do the Gail Dornick chosen one thing. Like, I don't want to see it. Nobody needs that. Please don't do it. But other than that, I would say this show is not bad. It's not half bad. It's not perfect, like I said, but I don't hate it. I would say I'm excited to watch the next episode. I'm excited to see where it goes. It looks like the next episode, they will be arriving on Trantor. So the next episode's set on Trantor. I'm curious to see when the next time jump will happen, and if they're gonna stay in that period, or if it's gonna be a thing where it's like sometimes we're like in the future and sometimes we're in the past and sometimes we're in a different time. If it's gonna keep jumping back and forth or not. I feel like if it did jump back and forth over and over again, that could get kind of annoying. So I'm hoping that like when they finally jump, they don't keep going backwards. Alright guys, so that's my review of the first 2 episodes of the Apple TV Foundation show. Like I said, I'm excited for the next episode, and I'm excited to see how they portray the rest of it. Really happy about the visuals in this. I think the visuals alone are enough reason to watch it. Like, the visuals are great. They really did a good job with the look of this. It looks just about as good as anything else It looks just about as good as any like sci-fi movie. It's like really clear that they spent a lot of money on the CGI budget and the sets. It looks really good. So just for that, if you have a nice big TV, turn this on and have yourself a drink, and it's fun. One more thing, my favorite conversation in the show was when Gail Dornick goes to the Foundation board members meeting or whatever it is, and they're talking about what they're going to preserve in the Encyclopedia Galactica. And we have this interesting moment where the character Gail Dornick, she kind of exposes the narrow-mindedness of some of the board members when she talks about what numeric system is going to be preserved and how certain systems and how certain planetary systems use 12-digit numeric systems instead of 10-digit numeric systems like we do. And she's talking about like they as the Foundation get to decide what history lives on, which that's such a important role. So that was a cool conversation and a cool scene that gave me hope that some of the ideas and philosophies from this book would remain in the show and be seen in future episodes. I'm super ready for it. Peace out, guys.